hardships, adversity, and suffering is one of the greatest impetus for spiritual growth. A lot of people, if they're too content, there's no impetus for growth, for self-knowledge, for looking inside. Everything's so nicey nice that there's no impetus to do it. And so I know that's true in my case. Like the whole reason I even got onto the spiritual path and all my shamanic practices and spiritual quests and all that is because I suffered so much in childhood. We had a very crazy childhood with beatings, psychological violence, foster homes, and so on. And it caused me so much despair that all the way through, let's say by the time I was in college, I was trying to escape all this stuff, not knowing any better and being really successful in my outer career. And I was an architect student at that time. And I was wonderful as a student, architect student. However, I don't care how beautiful the buildings are, they're not going to fill that hole in my heart, which was the real problem. And so by the time I was in college in Berkeley and so on, my God, I was sleeping 16 hours a day, just didn't have a really valid reason to live. Why? You know, everything was so, always, everything turns bad. You know, that was my summary. And up to then, everything did go bad. But eventually, it kicked me on to the spiritual path. I started meditating, was for me. It turned my gaze inward for the first time in my life, and out of meditation, the same 20-minute sessions, I got like a few seconds, 5 seconds of peace, real peace. So then my ego side would say, well, look at you meditate 20 minutes, you only got 5 seconds of peace, you know, and yet I said back to my ego, but that's 5 seconds more peace than I ever had in my life. You know, anyway, so it really got me into the whole spiritual path, the quest. And since then, of course, it's yielded so many treasures that now when I look back at my childhood filled with all the tragedies and traumas and stuff, I say, thank you, adversity, for kicking me onto the path. So suffering is really a huge impetus for our spiritual growth. Now, having said that, though, it's not the only way. Another thing is just sheer conscious awareness. Because since then, I've had a lot of great spiritual growth, like meditating in the Himalayas, those superordinary powers that I practice, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, some of you may know. Wow, none of that had to do with suffering. It just had to do with raising consciousness. So if you're conscious, you can make huge growth without suffering.